For anyone that doesn't know me, I'm the manager of customer success based here in Melbourne. Would love to grab a coffee if we haven't had a chance to meet yet, or network over some espresso martinis in not too long. I would also love to take the opportunity to introduce the Women in E-commerce series, which is what you're part of today, being in this session. Women in E-commerce is a series of talks, panels, various bits of content that we've released as part of Content Square's wider global org, all designed around championing anybody that identifies as a woman. So we're really passionate about just creating, hopefully, what is a safe space to talk about potentially vulnerable topics, challenges that those who identify as women may face. And we're interested in welcoming everyone, by the way, to this conversation, because we believe that anyone who's interested helping those people face those challenges and learn how to support them better is more than welcome here. So thank you so much for choosing this session today. I would love to get started by introducing, speaking of women, 3 incredible women that we've got on the panel today. So I'd love to just go one by one, introduce yourself, your role, and choose someone that inspires you.
Okay, thank you so much. So my name is Kate Cook. I am a head of analytics for a company called The Lumery. We've recently been acquired by Accenture Song, so we'll be making that transition very soon. What that kind of effectively means is, for me, most of my day-to-day is unearthing insights into companies, their customers, and campaigns that you run to help you make your next best decision. In terms of someone who inspires me with their personal brand, I really love someone kind of local. So if you're from Melbourne, maybe you'll have heard of this person. Georgie Hubbard is a recruiter, but also runs a, platform called Sisterhood Club. It's bringing really great women in technology together and men that love to champion women, so aligned with the same theme. And I think she does a really great job of, leaning into being herself, but also encouraging kind of all facets of digital content and that kind of thing. She's got a podcast. She's really great at kind of expressing exactly who she is authentically, and I just think she does a great job of it.
Amazing. Thank you, Kate. Maddie, what about you?
Hi, everyone. My name's Maddie Baxter-Smith. I'm the e-com manager for New Balance. So, yes, I've been looking at everyone's feet all day today, seeing what shoes you're wearing. I'm fortunate enough to be working at New Balance for the last 2.5 years. So my job's really to drive online trade, improve our customer experience, and just really kind of achieve our overall sales targets for Australia and New Zealand. When I kind of had to pick, like a source of inspiration, the first person that came to mind was Oprah. Now, this is a personal question, so that's my personal answer. I just think Oprah has a really strong brand. It's quite authentic, and she's come from very humble beginnings to become this kind of media powerhouse. So that would be my source of inspiration.
Absolutely. I think a beautiful blend, as you said there, Maddie, for sure. Stacey?
Hello. Oh, it is on. Whoa. Hi, everyone. My name is Stacey. A bit about me. I ran a digital agency called New Republic for many years, and we decided to pivot and specialise in experimentation in around 2015, and that led to us being acquired by Deloitte Digital. Similar story. And then as a partner at Deloitte, I was looking after the experimentation division, embedding the practice inside the consultancy and also servicing all of our clients. And I've recently just started a consulting business called White Maven, where we've kind of flipped the model. So now what we're doing is we're going into organisations, we're working with brands, clients and other agencies to help them build that experimentation capability in-house. And source of inspiration. So for me, the same sort of thing. I think I get connected or inspired by people that I know or where it seems a bit real. And so for me, it was Pip Edwards. So Pip Edwards is someone that I knew when I was younger, and I just think she's absolutely nailed personal brand. Like she's a single mum. She is a very successful businesswoman with her fashion brand, but she's also really interested in that wellness space and fitness. And I think as a persona, she's really done an excellent job of creating that very, very strong personal brand.
Absolutely, another great person there. So as we've all touched on, our main topic for today, tying into our overall gaming theme, is how to elevate your personal brand to boss level. So with that in mind, everyone, why do you think it's actually important to create your own personal brand? Stacey, should we start with you?
Sure. Look, I think the first time I thought about personal brand was when I shifted careers. So I had a 15-year career in fashion, and I'd built a reputation. I'd worked in Sydney, I'd worked overseas, and I got to a senior level and got that reputation, which was great. And then I made the shift into digital. And it was a bit of a shock to the system, but it was the first time I kind of thought about my personal brand, because in one category I had so much experience, and then I was moving to a category where I had no experience. So it made me kind of not question my identity, but become more aware of what my identity was and what that meant in a different category. And then that was kind of further enhanced when I was running New Republic and I had a team of 30 people. And I suddenly started to become a little bit more aware of how people saw me. It wasn't just about me and my personal brand. I had 30 people to look after, and they were looking up to me, and it started to make me think, who did I want to be as a leader? Did I want to be empathetic? Did I want to be a mentor? Did I want to have the team feel close to me? You're kind of setting the DNA and the team, culture, I guess. So that was when I started to really think about it. But I think that it's about having that internal view of your personal brand and your external view. So internally, if you can work out what does my personal brand mean to me, it kind of sets a direction for you to go, right, what decisions am I going to make for the job I take or the career decisions? But externally, which I think is the most important part, I think it helps people work out how they can engage you. Like, what's your reputation? What are you an expert in? What are you famous for? Like, it allows people to really work out how to engage you. And if you think about a brand, like let's, for example, say someone like Nike, like everybody knows Nike. You know what it means, you know the look and feel, you know the product. It's the same thing. If you've got a really clear personal brand for yourself, you're always going to be more successful.
I love that idea, sort of like setting expectations for like the best way to interact with you, find common ground, and it sort of does the work for you. I think it's really clever.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Maddie, do you have anything you'd like to add there?
I think I'll just piggyback off what Stacey said. So I think there's probably two different areas. So from two different perspectives, having, why is it important to create your own personal brand? So from a personal lens, I think that self-identity piece is really core. It can showcase your values, your passions, your strengths. It helps provide direction around where you want to move forward within your personal life, but also your professional life. And that will usually align with your values and then your long-term life objectives. So helping you kind of get where you want to go. And then from a professional lens, I think branding or having a really good personal brand is key, because it can position you kind of as a thought leader. So sharing your expertise and experiences and your authentic self with other people can really, kind of thereby influence leadership and really kind of establish yourself as a leader, and as a leader with a strong, authentic personal brand.
I completely agree, and I was actually going to say something similar, also piggybacking on what Stacey was saying there. Like, if you know who you are, you then are much more empowered in whatever room that you're in, and you're helping other people kind of set the expectations for what you feel is important. I think that's like helpful for other people as well, so it's a win-win both ways. I know, Kate, you have a lot of really, like, so many sound bites I've stolen from you in the last 3 weeks around just sort of leaning into like what you are, but also what you aren't, and that being quite important.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, the reason why people should start to really invest deeply in building their personal brand, even if sometimes it feels a bit cringe to do it anyway, is because of how much clarity it can give you personally, but also precision in attracting the right aligned opportunities. So I can admit, and am happy to, that I've been poached for multiple roles throughout my career as a result of leaning into talking, establishing myself as a thought leader, putting myself out there, but also really attracting those right aligned opportunities. So whether you believe in manifestation as being something woo, or just taking aligned action, which is kind of what I think it is, that then gets the right things at your doorstep. I mean, even the Lumery as an example, I kind of was a trained marketer, so did a marketing degree, and then later in my career really wanted to take a 180 into the discipline of analytics. I found I was so passionate about it, constantly wanting to talk about, more marketing attribution and measuring the effectiveness of those marketing strategies. And I was like, I don't want to go back to uni necessarily and go and study data science, for example, but I do have a real passion for analytics and translating, how to make data-driven decisions and take action off the back of those decisions. So I started talking about that a lot. And then very luckily for me, the Lumery reached out and said, hey, we're trying to build a function called Insights and Attribution, and you call yourself the attribution gal. So I feel like maybe we should chat. So again, maybe some people think that's cringe, but for me, it has always worked out and given me these phenomenal opportunities that maybe I would not have otherwise knew existed at all.
But I think you touched on such an important point there. Like, you use the word organic, right? And I think something I try to reassure myself about, maybe people in the room relate, if you are being your authentic self, yes, it might take you a minute or so, like you say, to find the right group, but at least you'll be seen as part of the group that you're trying to get into, whatever we're talking about there, whatever characteristic. Whereas if you're not able to be your authentic self, you're not going to attract the attention from the people you actually want to spend more time with. So it can be really scary, I agree, but it's worth it overall. Yeah. Our next question is actually a throwback to one of the previous panels that we did for a Women in E-commerce series about imposter syndrome. I know that's like a bit of a buzz phrase at the moment, but I think a great panel to talk to you about how do you actually navigate self-doubt, imposter syndrome when trying to build that personal brand. You know, we've used the term cringy, that's kind of along the same lines. What advice do you actually have for those that feel like they might be running into that a little bit? How would we kind of avoid that?
I love this. I think imposter syndrome absolutely is something that probably, if you're leaning into growth, you are always naturally going to feel. I kind of want to tackle this in two separate ways. The first kind of piece for me is around knowing your patch. So going back to that kind of clarity and precision, if you know what no one can touch you on, because that is your core strength, then you know what room you are supposed to be in. And if somebody else's expectation of you is different because they're expecting you to be something that maybe you are not, that is sometimes why we can feel imposter syndrome. I think like the difference between expectation and reality is often suffering. So by leaning into a personal brand, being very clear about what value you can bring and what you are not here for can kind of dispel some of that. But equally, much more tactically, I think that in the moment, sometimes you can know that, but like, what do you do when you're in the room and somebody else is going, hey, you're a head of analytics. I know that you're here with the domain expertise around marketing, but I expect you to be able to know how to code that Python script, which maybe isn't something that I can do, right? Isn't part of my skill set. How do you react in the scenario? So a couple of tips that I love to do. Firstly, standing kind of obviously in your own self-worth, being able to kind of go, yep, that's not my patch. This is what I'm here for. But also being able to kind of re-establish an authority around the topic. So if you're there guiding and leading the room and somebody else is making an incorrect judgment about what you're there for, being clear about going, cool, like I don't know that that's necessarily the question that we're here to answer today. The question that I'm looking to get out of this room is this, and you can take back control. So that's more of maybe a tactical thing, but I like to remember the kind of the first one, and then if I need it, pull some of those sound bites out of my sleeve if I need them.
I love that. Take back control is my latest soundbite from you. Yes, absolutely. Stacey, I feel like there's probably many examples, as with all of us, we can relate to definitely having to take back that control and maybe just redefine what you're there to do and how you can best help. Is that something you can share with the audience today?
Well, I just think on the topic of imposter syndrome, I think when you're experiencing it, you kind of feel like you're literally the only person in the whole entire world that is an imposter and everyone else knows what's going on. And I think the key is, you know, at any point in your career, someone is going to be having imposter syndrome and just remembering that, you know. And I think, exactly as you were saying, Kate, it's about growth. It's about if you can just work out and I guess, you know, realise that it is growth. And if you're living inside your comfort zone, you're not growing, you're not going anywhere. So when you are outside of your comfort zone, that's where the magic's happening and that's when you're growing. So, you know, if you are growing, you are going to be in that very uncomfortable kind of imposter feeling, thinking, I'm a little bit out of my depth. And I remember a video that I watched with Jacinta, the previous New Zealand PM, and she was talking to one of her predecessors, also female, and she was mentioning, like, often, and it's a generalisation, but I remember it really stuck with me. She said often men will be like 30-40% qualified, and they're like, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to put my hand up, I'm going to do that, I'm going to go for that promotion. But she said, as females, we often have to feel 120% or 150% qualified before we'll even put our hand up. And I think that really talks to imposter syndrome as well. It's not that we necessarily don't have the skill sets, but it's about being brave and putting ourselves out there for it. And the last bit was, I did an executive day at Deloitte and there was this amazing guy called Carlton Lamb, and he does a lot of executive coaching for CFOs and CEOs. And he said this really simple but powerful statement, which is, do what makes you comfortable. So his point was, you know, if you have a client presentation and you need to prepare and you need to rehearse, prepare and rehearse. Like if you are going for a promotion and you need to get a mentor, but kind of recognise what your weakness is and then do what makes you comfortable to overcome that. And I think it's so simple, but it's such powerful advice, because I think that really helps to channel that and then overcome those fears.
I completely agree. I think like we've all touched on this, so there's a misconception that like you have to always be ready all of the time for every skill that you're ever going to have, which is just completely ridiculous. I think we can all agree. So imposter syndrome is basically the manifestation of that, right? It's like, oh, I should already be done with this, but no, like you need some time to bake, that's okay. So just giving yourself that grace. And actually on the topic of, we're starting to think about being quite vulnerable, like sitting in that place of discomfort. I know, Maddie, this is something you're quite passionate about, just like normalizing that we go through this experience, right?
Yeah, I think just normalizing it, and I think one thing that's really helped me is taking feedback at face value. So no one's really ever going to tell you if you've done a really shit job. Someone's going to tell you you've done a good job, and actually just reminding yourself, okay, I've done well. Everyone else thought that I performed well, even if I didn't feel that I performed my best. I think the best piece of advice is just take action despite fear. In my personal experience, like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So why not just give something new a go? Most of the time I find the people that are the ones often judging you are the ones who are doing less than you. So just think about that. That's what I kind of remind myself is someone's having a go at me or judging me because I'm doing more than them. Yeah.
Be brave.
Please go for it, Kate.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think there's just as part of that as well, there is so much sort of tall poppy syndrome that exists in Australia especially, that's quite cultural with us. And I think to that point, kind of knowing that that's going to exist, and therefore there is just a little bit of courage that's required for that. Not everyone is going to like us. Not everyone is going to resonate with our opinion. Putting yourself out there can be scary for exactly that reason. And I think the thing that I always try to go to bed at night with is that understanding of, well, if I feel like I've led into my values, I have a point of view that could be absolutely challenged and create discourse that is going to encourage that person to learn and me to learn, then that's really at the core of it. And if imposter syndrome needs to sit next to me on the ride, then that's okay. We'll be friends.
I love this metaphor. We're on a roller coaster. This is great. I think that's really important. And it goes back to something we were talking about at the beginning. Like we started talking about authenticity and like following what you're genuinely interested in, like just focusing on that. And I think it's important to recognize that, yeah, you're not going to resonate with everybody. It's just impossible. You can't be, a superstar in every single room. But you can always fall back on your values. You can always act according to what's important to you. And I think that's, a little bit of reassurance if you're feeling a bit nervous. I guess on the topic of just wanting to impart as much wisdom as we hopefully can today, we've got a question here that is aimed at just really picking your brains. Like, what kind of strategies or tactics do you each personally find quite useful? Building your brand, promoting yourself, and is there anything that we should avoid as well?
Okay, maybe I'll jump back in here. So I think what's worked well personally is kind of finding that source of inspiration. I know we touched on it at the start, or kind of an ideal role model. So I'll bring this example back to Oprah Winfrey. Once again, it's personal. You may disagree, you may agree, whatever. But I think Oprah is a great example of someone who has really propelled her career, but also found a way to connect with others at the same time. And for me, I think that's what really defines a strong personal brand. I want to be, I want to come across who I am to my core, but also have a really, prosperous career. And I think kind of strategies or how you can learn from something like this is really kind of watching what this person does, identifying, what you like in their kind of branding, what you don't like, defining your unique selling proposition. So how are you going to add value? How are you going to be different? And then I think the biggest call out is just around a strategy with creating your own personal brand is it's a personal brand. So it should feel right for you. It's not going to feel right for everybody else. Everyone's going to have their own opinion on it, but just follow what feels right for you at your core, because it's about how you want to show up.
Absolutely. I should just quickly add, if anything in particular is resonating with you or you've got specific questions you'd like to ask the panel, there is a QR code on the slides in front of you. So don't hesitate to share with us some questions you'd like to dive into. But yeah, I think all of those, tactics and strategies are really important. A lot of synergy with what we've already been talking about there, Maddie. Kate, I know that it's important to you to kind of know who you're speaking to, and that really helps you.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like a lot of the work, the biggest work that we'll ever do in all of our lives, but that certainly extends to leaning into letting everyone else know who you are through personal branding, is actually just getting to know ourselves. And one thing that I feel like I've really come to learn through my life, and then that extends through to my personal brand, is just becoming a real taste maker. So understanding what your taste is and being the curator of your own passions and interests. As I said, you are supposed to have a clear point of view. That point of view won't be something that everyone shares, and that's great. That is what creates discourse. That's what makes you magnetic. Ultimately, the people that we have been so attracted to in life are people who withstood a kind of against societal pressures. You know, you look at like Martin Luther King and Steve Jobs, and people that kind of went against the status quo. Can be really scary to do that, but that's actually, I think, where the magnetism is. And then in terms of pitfalls, I have a personal gripe where I often notice that there are a lot of people who lean into their personal brand on social media who get stuck in the trap of talking to their peers instead of their ideal audience. So know that if there is a small part of you that wants to feel validated in, you know, connecting with other people who might be in your discipline, that is absolutely valuable if that's your objective. If your objective is to grow in your craft and in your skill set, and your audience is obviously your peers and you want to be able to have that conversation, phenomenal. But if who you really want to reach is your ideal customer, keeping that kind of top of mind. Don't get stuck into the pattern of going, I just want to sound like, use all the jargon and use all of that kind of terminology to make me seem like I'm someone. Really think about who it is you want your message to land with.
That's very important, isn't it? Avoid falling into the trap of just repeating what you've already seen that's worked, because actually in order to be truly successful, you kind of want to find what's unique for you. For sure, yeah. How about you, Maddie?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, just kind of going back to where we started. I just think it's around kind of knowing your strengths and how you add value, like what you were saying before, Kate, knowing what your job is in this room and what you're here to do, and advocating for yourself and saying, hang on, I'm the expert in e-commerce, not marketing. They're two completely different things. Things like that. And I think the other thing is just around kind of quantifying your achievements. So really celebrate the wins. You know, it's going to really help you kind of promote yourself, know your worth. And I think, I know I've spoken about it, but I think there's just this big push around kind of being transparent and just your authentic self. I know I keep harping on about it, but I think it really kind of comes across with regards to personal branding.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stacey, any tactics or strategies in particular you'd like
I
to
love
share?
the authenticity.
Yeah.
I love the fact that not everyone's going to like you. I think it's quite, you know, nice to recognise that. But I think in terms of strategies or tactics, for me, I was thinking about New Republic, and when we made a decision in 2015 to change from a full-service agency to a specialist agency, our mission or our goal as a business was to become the best CRO agency in Australia. And then that was our goal. And then what we did is we said, okay, well, if that's our goal, what are the activities that we need to do to become that? So that meant it was like, who do we want as our clients? Like we had a tagline about having being masters of our craft. And that meant if we had to have the best practitioners in market, mentoring them, training them. So, and then Nima and I ran a podcast around experimentation. We did executive dinners. We did thought leadership pieces. But all of those activities laddered up to the overarching goal. So I think if you use that analogy but then shift it to your personal brand, it's the same philosophy though. If you can work out like what is your overarching goal, where do you want to get to, work backwards and then go, right, what are the activities I now need to do to ladder up to that goal? But then I also think it's about your environment. So fast forward to Deloitte, and I have never had to sell myself so much internally inside a business. But it was, we had market presence and people knew us and we had reputation, but inside Deloitte, it was about who are we inside the organisation. It's a very, very large organisation. There's 11,000 people, I think, in Australia. So it was about, I had to have, you know, coffee catch-ups and lunches, and started to do lunch and learns and same sort of dinners and thought leadership, but it was about bringing the internal business of Deloitte across what we were doing and building that same brand and that reputation. So if we had clients come with a certain brief, they said, oh, you know who'd be great for that? That's Stacey. So I had to kind of rebuild that personal brand inside Deloitte. So I think it's also about working out your environment and shifting accordingly. And I think the last one for me as well is think about your CV, like be thoughtful with your CV. It's unfortunately one of those things that you can't go back with a rubber and just erase things that are not quite right or you wish didn't happen. So with that note, and it's easier said than done, especially with market conditions as they are, but if you can kind of work out where you're going and what you want to do, try and be thoughtful about those career choices. I've seen many CVs over the years and how long someone stayed in a role, what is their role, is it telling a story, is there a narrative behind it? So if you can kind of craft that storytelling in your CV, I think that's also a really good tactic as well.
Absolutely. You're essentially talking about breaking a big personal brand vision down into manageable chunks, which I think is
100%.
great advice. That's exactly how we'd work with any sort of business in a consultative way. So actually, as you were talking, the phrase that was ringing in my head is, what does success look like? But actually, it's quite good, right? What does it feel like? What does it look like if you've done the thing that resonates with your personal brand? Actually have a plan for that. Absolutely. Amazing. I think our final question for today, then, everybody, would be, do you have any resources on this particular topic, books, blogs, podcasts, that you'd be able to recommend to our audience if they want to learn more or maybe get some of the enthusiasm that you all have for this topic? Kate, do you want to start?
Sure thing. So in the spirit of self-promotion, given that's what we're talking about
Do
here,
it.
I will do a totally shameless plug that I will soon be launching a podcast on exactly this topic because it is something I am so passionate about. I know the value that can be driven from being really clear about who you are, but also the kinds of activities that go into determining what that is for you. There's a lot of self-exploration work that's required in that in order to get it right. I'm really excited. Actually, I won't point her out, but there's someone in the audience here who actually participated in the first recording of the podcast last week. So yeah, very excited to be able to share that soon. Beyond that, I also mentioned her, but Georgie Hubbard does a phenomenal job of, if you wanted to kind of look to someone who's doing it and executing it in practice, she does a really great job of kind of the content flywheel sort of approach, which is she'll do a long form piece of content. So whether it's a podcast and a blog, and then kind of cut that up into kind of different social media chunks to share. And, she obviously has her event as well and creates a lot of content from there. So I think she does a really good job of that kind of cyclical approach to investing deep in content creation, but then making it really work for her. So she's a good one to look at too.
Yeah, amazing. Great suggestions. Thank you so much. And everyone tune into Kate's podcast very soon. Maddie?
Mine's a little bit different, so I have a bit of a framework. So I do kind of struggle with this reflective work. So for me, I'm very analytical. So if there's a framework that's going to help me really just redefine who I am and help me further understand who I am, that's for me. So there's a framework called Ikigai. So it's Japanese heritage. Basically, it looks at everything from your values, your strengths, areas of improvement, what you think the world needs from your perspective, and kind of all crosses together and creates this kind of your defining purpose or how you're going to live a fulfilled life. And I think you can take a lot from completing a framework like this. It really highlights your values, what you personally think the world needs. How I would answer that and how Tara would answer that would be very different, and can kind of help you determine, okay, this is what I want to stand for. So I would be doing something like that if you're a little bit more, analytical and you just kind of need a bit of a framework to follow, and then using that to really kind of go, okay, this is who I am and this is how I want to show up.
I love that, and I think values are so important, right? And I think values lead into the personification of your personal brand, and it just makes me think about years ago when I was working out my top values, and I remember I got consistency, and I was like, God, no, it's so boring. I don't want consistency as my top value. But when you dumbed it down, it was, I love going to my favourite coffee shop and getting my coffee with the right milk, with the right coffee in the right cup, and it's not too hot and it's not too cold. But that consistency, it makes me happy. And then when I started to look across different aspects of my life, like that consistency, I do hold that as an important value. But I think if you can do those frameworks or things to really work out what your values are, that's going to help ladder into your personal brand. I totally agree. My not recommendation, but a book that kind of talked to me a long time ago, and again, it's a bit left field. It's not particularly about personal brand, but it's a book called E-Myth, and it was more around starting a business, but it talks about every business to be successful has got to have an entrepreneur, a technician, and a manager. And you need those 3 absolute skill sets to run a successful business. A lot of people, when they're starting a business, they think that they're the entrepreneur. Actually, they're a really good technician trying to run a business, and then that's where a lot of businesses fail. But I think what I liked about that in terms of personal brand is it's a really good way to recognise, well, who am I? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And if you can kind of be really clear about your skill sets and your strengths, I think that really helps to ladder up into your personal brand.
I think that's a very simple but a very effective way of approaching this, absolutely. And once again, kind of loops back to the conversation that we all had at the beginning about just trying to be as authentic as you can. If you don't know what that means for you, I can't recommend enough just doing the work, as we've all touched on here. Like, list those adjectives that resonate with you. Who do you want to be? Do you want to be consistent? Do you want to kind of stand out for a particular reason? Taking that time to reflect, I think, is a great place to start. Absolutely.
I also love Kate's point just about,
Yes.
you know, not everybody's going to love you, and I think it's such a powerful
accept
point of
that.
view. Like, I think we often strive to be the best, and we strive to be right, and but you don't want to be normal and the same, right? That's what makes life interesting, and if you can kind of be a little bit different and embrace that, then happy days.
I also feel like there's a big part of just knowing that you have the freedom to grow, evolve, and change as well. I think there's a lot online that kind of says, you know, funnily enough, consistency is so important. And it absolutely is if you're wanting to be phenomenally strategic about your direction. But equally, we are all humans that need to like live and breathe in the world. You need to love what you're doing. So like if you need to pivot. It's your life at the end of the day. And I've always found that you can find a way to craft the narrative and you will attract the right tribe. I've, you know, lived and breathed the ability to see that that does happen in real life.
I totally agree. Yeah, there's no such thing as too late, right? Like if yesterday was the best day, today is the next best day. So go for it. Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. These sessions mean so much to us, and we're just really grateful for your time. Have a fantastic rest of the afternoon.